Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the DoersCast. I'm your co-host, Mr. Gardner.
And I'm your co-host, Jonathan Din.
This podcast is centered around entrepreneurs and small business owners who are putting actions to their ideas to achieve their goals. These people are the ultimate doers among us. It is our job to highlight their experiences. And today we have a very special guest. Also, before we kick it off.
Today we have an awesome guest. He's a lifelong athlete, a military veteran, a speaker, a motivator, the co-author of the book, Primal Uprising, and the co-founder of polioeffects, the largest paleo events in the world. Please welcome Keith Norris. All right, Keith, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, sir.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
We appreciate you coming on as well. And could you please share a little bit about polioeffects, how it started, and what do you guys do today for the audience?
Yeah, so, there's a very, very long story that goes into how that came about, but I'll give you the truncated version of it. Is both my wife, Michelle, and I were in corporate America. We were doing the corporate warrior lifestyle for a long period of time. And we felt, even though that we had both risen to positions in corporate America to where we were making bank, we had the big house, big cars, kids in the best schools, everything was going on. We felt something was missing. We felt empty, and we didn't exactly know what that was. But we felt like at that time, and this is around 2008, which I know is a lifetime ago to you guys, but for us, it seems very, very recent. And what you might not know about 2008 was it was a financial crisis. It was the housing crisis, and all of our FU money, if I could say that, was tied up in real estate at the time. And we had decided to bail on corporate America and just kind of, become entrepreneurs and figure it out on ourselves. And long story short, 2008 hit, and it really tested whether we were going to walk the walk or tuck tail and go back to corporate America where it was safe. Because we were doing well in corporate America, and we could have continued to do well, but it wasn't satisfying to us. Long story short, we did bail. We came to Austin. Both of us are from South Texas, and we knew that we wanted to come to Austin. And if you're an entrepreneur, Austin is the place to be. I mean, there's a few hubs of entrepreneurship. Austin is one of them, and that was the type of entrepreneurship we wanted to get into, which was this mix of kind of tech and health and wellness and woo, all of those things together. It was a perfect mix in Austin, and that's right where we wanted to be. And anyway, we landed here. I opened gyms. So I had gyms here in the Austin area. They were efficient exercise gyms. They were very, very successful. And Michelle was a chef, and she started a catering company and did essentially paleo keto catering back before keto was a thing. And we were very successful in doing that. And we just accumulated all of these people, all of these contacts that I knew from health and wellness, that Michelle knew from the foodie side of things. And so we just had all of these, we just had a big Rolodex, right? Which I think as an entrepreneur, if I have a gift as an entrepreneur, I have a big Rolodex. Like I'm a connector. There are different entrepreneurs have different skill sets. You don't want me doing finances. You don't want me doing IT. You don't want me doing anything like that, but creative and connections, that's my gig. And Michelle has her own skill set too. And both of those came together, and it parlayed into, and Michelle had some previous event planning under her belt. And, we were pitched with the idea of, hey, you guys know everybody in the scene. It'd be cool if you guys put on an event. And we were just like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. I think we're good doing what we're doing. But eventually we came to the idea that after going to conference after conference after conference, there was something missing that we wanted to see as conference goers. Mm-hmm. And we initially kind of came up with a quote unquote business plan. It was on the back of a napkin. In fact, we were flying from Los Angeles back to Austin after going to a conference, and we just kind of wrote out a business idea on the back of a napkin. And we thought to give it to the people who were running the conference that we had just come to. And then we were like, yeah, why do that? We'll just do it ourselves. So,
right.
And so that's how it was born. And
amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, we really went into it blind. And I think that's another key for entrepreneurs is we didn't have all the answers. I mean, we had a passion, we had a vision, and if you have a passion and a vision, you can make it happen. And we did.
Going back to you making that jump from corporate America to entrepreneurship, what gave you the courage to do that? Because there's lots of people that are maybe like they're stuck in corporate America and they know they want to do more. So what gave you the courage to make that jump from corporate America to entrepreneurship? Because there's tons of people that are maybe in that situation and they want to try something in entrepreneurship, but they don't make that leap. What gave you the courage to go ahead and do that?
Well, I think for myself, and I'll speak for Michelle as well, we've always been fearless. We're not afraid to fail. And I think many people do not pursue their dreams for fear of failing, right? And in entrepreneurship, failure is just part of the recipe. I mean, people have this vision of entrepreneurship being win after win after win after win, and it's anything but.
Exactly.
I mean, you can think of entrepreneurship as a major league batter, right? Where batting, 250 will get you in the Hall of Fame, and that's entrepreneurship. I mean, if you get 3 hits out of 10, I mean, that's amazing. So failure is part of the mix, and it's not like you try to fail. But I mean, you can have the right idea at the wrong time. I mean, there's so many variables into entrepreneurship that go into it that really, when an idea does take root and it takes off, it's almost a mini miracle that it all comes together. And so when you know that and you go into it, you're resilient to failure and you're adaptable. And those are the two keys to entrepreneurship. Well, actually, there's 3. There's got to be a passion. You have to be passionate about this. You have to want to work for yourself. You have to want to change the world. All of those things, yes. And you have to be resilient for all the hardships, all the failure, everything that comes about. And you have to be adaptable because there is no game plan. I mean, like, for instance, you guys could model exactly what Michelle and I did with polioeffects, and it would fail because that worked then, right? And if we were to start a new conference now, we might have some ideas that we can take from polioeffects, but there's a new landscape. We just went through 2 years of COVID stuff, right? So it's a completely new landscape. So I have to adapt just like you guys have to adapt. And that's one reason why I love entrepreneurship is it keeps me very young, because to be adaptable is to be young. Right. And it just keeps me lively. And yeah, totally.
All right. Speaking of how it started, I really like the story you told about you were on a plane and you just wrote the idea out on a napkin. But I'm curious, how did you turn that idea on a napkin to reality? What was the first month like for you guys turning it into an actual event?
So I'll tell you this. It takes us 18 months to put on a polioeffects show from the time we start. Okay, there's going to be a 2022 show. That has already been in planning for a long, so there's a long runway. We did the first show in 6 months. So it was, granted, it wasn't the size that it is now, but it was still a big show. We still had over 800 people at the first show. So it was a big show. We took an idea and we actually did the work. So that's the other thing too, is, ideation, manifestation, the thought process, all of that is very, very important. And you still have to do the grind on the daily, right? We still had to assemble a team. We still had to bring people in and interview them and find people, on a shoestring, by the way. So we had to do this from zero. So it's like, okay, we're going to have to seed this with some of our own money. So there's risk. And we're doing this so that we can bring in key players to be able to help us out. But, and 90% of it was on Michelle, because I was immersed in running gyms at the time too. So I had very little time to offer up to this. Most of it fell on her shoulders. And what she couldn't bring in for help, she had to do herself.
Wow.
And that's where you have to wear a lot of different hats. That's where you have, startups, the CEO is also the CFO, is also the CTO. And I mean, and you're not good at all of those, but you can get it done. And the key is, as you grow as an entity, is to be humble enough to realize that those things that you are not good at, and to hire in the things that you are not good at. And I think we did very well in that too. I mean, Michelle is a natural CEO. That's her makeup. That's what she does. I am a natural. If I'm a natural anything, it's a CMO. Like I know marketing. I know that realm.
Yeah,
I am not a CEO. I am not. And I don't enjoy those activities. That's not what lights me up. And so you have to be good at finding what lights you up and being very, very humble and going, I can do the part of a CFO, but I don't like it. And I'm not good. There is somebody out there who's excellent at it and who enjoys it. So it's just a process. But at first we had to be the CFO. We had to be everything. Yeah.
How did you eventually find those team members? Like I heard you got a new CFO, a new each person for each cap, basically. How did you end up finding those people? How did you know they were a right fit?
Yeah, so you don't. And how did we? You don't until you put them to the test. I mean, that's just unless you have worked with people before, right? And you know their skill sets. But a lot of it was, again, it comes back to the Rolodex. I mean, it was dial a friend. Hey, man, do you know somebody who is good? Whatever task. We're looking to bring somebody in. Granted, this is very risky. It's a startup. They have to have that a certain level of risk that they're resilient to, and some people love that atmosphere. I particularly really like that atmosphere because it is a bit of an adrenaline rush, and I am an old school adrenaline junkie, and so I love it. And it's not for everybody, that walking the tightrope, the waking up every morning, not knowing if you're going to be in bankruptcy or you're going to be fine. And that's a reality. I mean, for the first 2 years of PaleoFX, it was like, we're about a week away from bankruptcy. And that's how we operated, and week to week to week. And it was just a tightrope. But that's the nature of a startup. You're constantly trying to get money to fuel the machine, and you're constantly with a specter of, we're going to have to shut the doors in a week. I mean, if we don't, but that's very exciting on the other side of it too.
That was a very good point about the risk tolerance of the people that you bring on board, especially towards the beginning, because, not everybody is going to be as resilient, especially as like the founders. So that's a very good point. And yeah, you just, like you said, you have to put them to the test because, once things don't go as smoothly,
Truly. And here's the other thing too, you will burn through people, right? And especially so in events. Events are, if startups are hard, events are even harder. Because just the nature of the event itself, the end product has so many variables involved with it, right? So it's not like you get to the end of the line and you have an app that, okay, you might have some bugs in the app you have to work out. Yeah. A live event is just by its nature infested with bugs. I mean, the weather, anything you can think of could go wrong.
Yeah.
And it usually does at the event. And it's just the nature of who you have there to be able to very calmly put out all these little mini grass fires. And that takes a certain skill set. And some people love it. And some people, it just racks their nerves and they can't deal with it. And that's cool. Every person that we have had to let go, I love dearly. And I understand, it's not for everybody. And so I understand that. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, again, like the event is different from a business because right now it's kind of like a movement. You'll have a movement of trying to bring awareness to the world of paleo ancestral health. And I really like that. It's pretty different from a business because you don't have a product. It's more like bringing everyone to a tribe with you, right? And I was about the tribe because you talk about that a lot. And I really like that you bring it both in entrepreneur realm and like paleo itself, like the event, you talk about tribe, and you talk about tribe in like finding a team of people you want to work with as well. And I want to ask you, like, what does tribe mean to you, and how important is it to you?
Yeah, tribe for me is everything. So I learned very, very early on. So being a lifelong athlete, right? Your tribe is an athlete. For me, I played football, right? So that's a natural tribe, right? I mean, you just, I mean, you go through all of that hardship with, 40, 50 different guys, you will become very, very tight. And in doing so, it's amazing how things like skin color, likes, dislikes, religion, all of that just falls by the wayside because you have to have each other's backs. And you realize very quickly that all of that other stuff is just, it's nothing, right? It's the person inside that really, really matters. And then I went from that right into the military, and the military is the same thing. I mean, it's exactly the same thing. So for me, this tribe is a group of people who we all identify with the same passions. And I can tell you that Michelle and I have what we call here in Austin, the soul fam, right? And these are people that are, for the most part, entrepreneurs, not all entrepreneurs, but they have very similar likes and dislikes as us. And they're very, very passionate. Yeah. And I mean, it is the palette of people. It's just an amazing palette of people, but we all come together as a soul fam because we all have each other's backs. And we have groups on like Signal and stuff, and it is literally called the soul fam group. If somebody's going through a hard time, bam. I mean, we are a family within a family. That's beautiful. And it is literally our family of choice. Yes. These are our ride or dies. These are people that we would give everything for, and they would give everything for us. So for me, that is tribe for sure. Yeah. That's cool. And then it extends. And then I was going to say it extends outward from that, right? And then you have like the greater tribe, like I would call the people who follow polioeffects would be the greater tribe. I might not even know these people personally, right? And a lot of them I don't. A lot of them I see once a year, and we kind of do that at polioeffects because I've seen them there year after year after year, but I don't know their personal story. I just know that we have an identification and something very, very in common because they keep coming back year after year after year. But yeah, that's what I would call a tribe. And I would like to go back real quick to the entrepreneurship side of an event. So even right now, Michelle and I are struggling with, okay, so we had the 2019 event, and then we were gearing up for the 2020 event. And then obviously the virus, the pandemic happened, which shut us down for 2 years. So now we're in the process that we're almost a startup again. Right. It's like, do we want to engage fully in this again and get this machinery kicked back up again to produce another event? Or are we going to skew this more towards the Primal Uprising side of things and see how that, so you never end with the decisions as an entrepreneur. It's constant. And we're dealing with this right now. And in fact, in the next few weeks, we'll probably be forced into a decision, because if we're going to have an event in 2022, you've got to have some machinery up and running and get that going. So that's just to say that, there are easy times in entrepreneurship, but but they never stay. And that's cool by me. And again, I'm cool with that. I get it. I understand. Life is that way, right? Life is not just one happy glide. Right. Life is a roller coaster, man. And entrepreneurship is just life on steroids.
Wow. The only constant is change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's entrepreneurship. Yeah. Going back to you saying, being a connector, was this sort of a skill or a quality you always had? Or is this something that over time you sort of grown into, like connecting people? Because that's such a valuable quality in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I really didn't realize that I had the quality for a long period of time until it was pointed out to me. I would, eventually, when I was in the gym business, one of our trainers, because he would constantly observe people coming to, hey, do you know somebody that knows X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, yeah, I'll put you in touch with so and so, and just like over and over and over throughout the day, I was doing this like day after day, and he's like, damn, man, I'm gonna start calling you the plug. So he started calling me the plug, and I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. I do that a lot. And then I thought, that's kind of a cool trait to have, but what am I going to do with that? I didn't really understand the value of it, the value of having that. I just enjoy people. I enjoy people's stories, and I just naturally remember what it is that they are good at, what lights them up. And I think it's part of, I'm really into human psychology. And I think that's part of human psychology that I really appreciate people for their psychologies and all of the deeper things about them. And it just sticks in my mind. And so, when person A is looking for a skill set, I just automatically just rifle through this Rolodex.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yes, connecting is like a huge skill, and it's in a lot of books too about like how to network. And I'm curious as to your advice too, since you seem really good at this. Like I remember you said in another interview that you're not an expert in many fields, but you know experts in many different fields, right. And that's like huge for your event, huge in business. And so I would like to ask for your advice. Like, do you have any advice on networking, on connecting as well?
Yeah. So my procedure for networking is probably a little bit different than most people's, and it is just the natural extension of myself. So for instance, if I'm at a large event and there is lots of networking going on, I don't try to make numerous superficial meetings or contacts. My goal is to get 1, 2, or 3 very, very deep, rich contacts. Okay. So I go for depth, quality. Right. But that's my methodology. And that's just what comes to me naturally. I know other people who are very good at networking who do the exact opposite. They're like, no, man, you got to go for the numbers because it's they look at it as a funnel. So you got to keep the top of the funnel full. And I'm like, I get that, and I'll continue to do it my way. It's worked for me so far, and I don't like superficial connections, right? I want to go deep. So I'm really just doing what it is that I love and what comes naturally.
Wow.
And I think that is the key. I mean, if you love making a bunch of superficial contacts for whatever reason, cool. I'm sure it will work out for you really, really well. But you can be a very good networker, even at I've been to 1,000-person events and come away with like 2 contacts, but those 2 contacts were like lifelong, deep, very influential contacts that, oh, by the way, splintered out from them as well. So there's this multiplication effect that takes place if you have these very, very deep contacts. And again, that works for me.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And I would imagine that strengthens your ability as a connector too, right? Because you have that depth with that individual. So when you're thinking, oh, so and so, I have that real connection. It's not a bunch of superficial connections. It's a real connection there. So yeah.
And that's just and again, it's just a natural trait of mine to. And in some ways, I am a very unlikely networker because small talk isn't my thing. If you want to go woo, I'm a Scorpio. Scorpios are all about, diving into the depths. Yeah. And if we meet and you talk to me, we're going to go deep really, really fast.
I relate to that. No, I'm relating to that too. Like I'm kind of an introvert. So when I talk to people, I want to skip past the small talk. I want to get right to knowing them. That's all I care about, honestly. Right. And I'm really glad to hear that advice. Like that relates to me. You guys give me some advice.
Now here's the other thing too. That can be off-putting to some people. Right.
Yeah,
because they're just like, whoa. And they kind of start backpedaling figuratively. That's cool. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Right. So I'm just like, but but for the ones that do connect, I mean, you can see their eyes light up when you just start just diving in. They're like, oh, somebody who's going to like, yes, thank you very much. Yeah. We're going to have a conversation. Right on. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know when I first spoke with you, I had an amazing conversation. My eyes went up. So yeah,
totally. Yeah, right on. Yeah. Yeah, it was a great conversation.
Also, like after you meet them, you have a really good conversation. How do you follow up and like keep all your connections? Because I assume your network's huge. How do you make them all warm? How do you keep them all around?
Yeah, so this is where I leverage social media, right? So people will diss on social media quite a bit, and I get it. It can be a time sink, right? If used in that way, or it can be such a valuable tool for keeping up and connecting with people. And that's how I use social media. And I, within social media, I'm very rarely in the meat of it, but I spend a lot of time in the individual messages or the DM portions.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how I leverage social media. And, there's a lot of contacts that I don't, that I haven't talked with in years. And that's cool because I don't necessarily have anything to relate with them in the moment, but for whatever reason, my mind is wired to even go years back when I'm talking with somebody and I see a connection between the two.
Wow.
And I mean, people are always happy to be connected, right? Whether you've talked to them, yesterday or it's been 5 years. If you connect them to someone who helps them and they help the other person and vice versa, I mean, they are, that's a favor and they remember that. And I don't do this to be remembered. I just do it because it comes naturally to me. And I leverage that in my, in putting on events and things like that. For instance, in writing this book, a large portion of this book is quotes from people I've connected with, because as I'm writing a section, I'm like, yes, Dave Asprey has an awesome quote about, I know his ideas on this. I bet he can give an awesome quote. Boom, send that out. Hey, Dave, man, can you give a quick, and it was just over and over and over as I was going through this. And the only way I could do that was because I had the connections with these people and I knew their stories and I knew what they were about. I knew what they were passionate about. Yeah.
Yeah, I know in your book, Primal Uprising, you cover 7 pillars. How did you formulate that? Like, was that the main premise of the book? Like when you first thought of the book, you're like, okay, we're going to cover these 7 pillars, or was this something over time it came together?
So it came together over time, and how it came together is it's been a very, very long process. So I've been interested in human psychology since I was an athlete. And the reason I became interested in it was I realized that there were certain coaches who were just very, very good at connecting not only with each individual athlete, but as the team as a whole. And you could see the difference. I mean, there were coaches who were good with, like, let's say the technicality, the X's and O's, right? But they had a hard time relating to the players. And there were coaches who might not be as good with the X's and O's. That's why they had assistants, but they were geniuses when it came to connecting with and motivating, right? So what motivates me is probably different than what motivates you two. Right. And so the idea of a coach is to be able to go, okay, what is it about Mr. that how can I best motivate him? Right. And how can I best motivate Keith and how can I best motivate this team as a whole? Yeah. So there are certain coaches who are masters at that. And I was really like, what is it that they're doing? And so from very, very young. And so I studied a lot of human psychology and Jungian psychology and habit change. And I mean, it ran the gamut because I was just so interested in trying to figure out what the it was.
Wait, did you say Jungian psychology, like Carl Jung?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that person. Yes, I'm really into that too. Yeah, I love that person.
I mean, it's very, very deep psychology, and it is true. And so if you know how the human mind works, And if you know how the human mind works in general, then you can start to break down the specifics of what the particulars are in that individual that helps motivate them. The flip side of that is you can also know how to manipulate them in a bad way.
That's very true.
So this is two sides of the same coin, right? And to me, it's like money, right? Money is just energy, right? Yeah. In the hands of a person who chooses to do good with it, it's a beautiful thing, and it flowers, and that wealth creates opportunities for people to find themselves in flower and all of these things, or it can be used as a tool of oppression, right? And it depends on how the person wields it. It's the same way with like Jungian psychology, NLP, all of these tools. Either way, right? You can be very manipulative and be a used car salesman with it, figuratively, or you can help empower people with it and have them realize the best versions of themselves. So part of what Michelle and I do as well in our entrepreneurial endeavors is we do coaching, individual coaching, right? And we do lots of that, and we use these tools in that coaching. And so throughout the process of that, we identified these certain areas in which people struggled, right? And they're just general areas, and it just kept happening time after time after time again. And what we saw was that these people, and most of them were entrepreneurs, that happened to be who we worked with mostly. So an entrepreneur, for example, generally they have the financial areas of their life pretty well figured out. I mean, if they're utilizing us, and we're not cheap, they have their finances pretty well intact. Yeah. The problem is other areas of their life are just train wrecks. But in their mind, they're like, well, my relationships and my physical health is in the gutter, but if I increase my financial well-being, that will bring those up too, and it never works, right?
Balance, yeah.
Right. So the idea is there's not a hierarchy of these 7 pillars. The idea is that it's on a vertical plane, and you want all of them elevated. And yeah, there are periods in your life where, like, I've always, and everybody has a natural inclination to one or another. My natural inclination has always been the physical, right? I've always had control of my physical body. I've always been in good health. I've always yada, yada, yada. That one has always been quote unquote easy for me. That's a natural. For me, what I struggled with was finances and relationships, right? Mm-hmm. So, and when I was younger and didn't know any better, I thought, well, I'll just become a better physical specimen and the other two will just come up. And it never happened, right? And I was just like, why am I struggling so much? I mean, look at me. I'm a physical specimen. And my relationships are in the tank and my finances are in the tank. What's the point? And I finally, through psychology and through NLP and a lot of diving deep into myself, realized, oh yeah, I mean, you can't overcompensate in one area to make up for this area. I actually have to do work in these areas that I feel very uncomfortable in. So I'm going to have to do work in those areas. And I did. And I brought those areas up. I went in and did the internal work. And there were lots of self-limiting stories that were entwined in the subconscious. And I did the work. Flash forward to now, and us working with people, you can start to identify where these self-limiting stories lie. If they haven't already realized it, when we do our intake, you can find it pretty quick. And then it's just a process of asking them if they want to work on that. You know, because I can't, it is not my place to illuminate something for somebody and say, you need to fix this. That's not my place. I can illuminate it and say, I think this might be an issue. If you'd like to work on it, I'm down. And if they agree, cool, we're off and running. But if they're like, nah, you're out to lunch, we're going to work on something else. Okay, cool.
So you talk a lot about how, work-life balance and how some people focus on one pillar instead of the others. What is your opinion on hustle culture then? Because like entrepreneurs have this entire culture about, put all your time into work, sleep late, wake up early. Like, I'm assuming that's not like what you're into, right?
No, and look, there is a time and place for everything, right? So if someone wants to be an entrepreneur, there are going to be times where you're hustling 24/7 for weeks on end. Cool. Just know in the greater landscape, you are going to have to back off. You are going to have to balance all of these other pillars. We are very, very resilient beings, right? We can put all of our resources into one bucket for a limited amount of time. And it's just the realization, right? I realize if I pour all my resources into the financial, which would be the entrepreneurship largely, if I put all my resources into the financial bucket, these other attributes are going to start to slide. And I've got a finite amount of time with which before it starts to get out of hand and the ship starts getting unbalanced. And so if I choose to do that, and I've done this on the athletic side of things, right? When I was competing, I put everything on the athletics, unknowing everything else started to slide. And I was able to right the ship enough, not even knowing what I was doing, but I was able to figure out and do it. And then I came to the realization, oh yeah, okay, so this is like the Olympic athlete, right? You put everything in for 4 years. There's a competition. Some of them transition nicely into regular life, some train wreck. Same thing with pro athletes. If you put everything into that athletic bucket that you can, you're going to have to buoy the other portions at some point, right? Or you will wreck. I mean, we see it over and over and over and over again. But for a while, you can get away with it.
But then, isn't there like also a problem of burnout? Like many entrepreneurs start with this burning, but the burning passion but fleets really quickly, and so you have to find a way to make it sustainable. And so I'm asking you, how have you like been sustainable in your business? Because it's been going on for like 8 years, right? So how have you managed your time? How have you been able to keep a schedule that's reasonable enough that keeps you going, but not like makes you burn out either?
Yeah. So this is again time management. Again, it's looking at the 7 pillars, making sure everything is balanced. It's the realization that yes, there will be periods. So every year prior to polioeffects, the month prior to it, and especially the couple of weeks beforehand, it is pretty much 24/7. We are going, right? You're grabbing sleep here and there, but you are going. Cool. Understand that. On the other end, we are taking a lot of time off. And we're going to back off. We're going to regroup. We're going to get our eating back right. We're going to get our sleep patterns back right. We're going to get our relationships, back to where they should be. All of that's going to come up. The danger is when you don't ever back off of that. That's where the burnout comes, right? So you go in with the realization that there are going to be times and there are going to be periods where we're going to be going 100 miles an hour, hair on fire. Awesome. Very, very cool. That's exciting. And you can't do that forever. Right. Yeah. So there's that. And it's always, I know balance is a cliche thing, but it's things are cliche because they're fundamentally true. People just don't want to hear them. That's why they become a cliche. It's like, I don't want to hear that. Well, that's the truth.
Yeah. Right. That's a good point.
Okay. Yeah.
I know it's getting, I was just going to say, I know it's getting close to the 1 o'clock mark. We had 2 questions that we want to make sure we get into pretty much every podcast. And one of them is, where do you see yourself / your business in 5 years?
Wow, that's a good question. If you would have asked me this 2 years ago, that would have been a totally different answer. I'm in a period right now, and I am cool with this. Very, very, very cool with this. I don't know. Right now, we are backing off. We don't know what's going to become a Primal Uprising in the book. We don't know. I mean, we have a very good idea that it's going to take off. We think it's the idea that people need at this time, but I don't know that to be a fact. I don't know what the event space looks like in a year. I don't know what it looks like next month, much less a year from now. So I'm at a period in my life right now where I am just open to the universe, right? I have this skill set. I have this passion, and I am just, in some ways, waiting for the universe to direct me in the right way. The me a few years ago would not have had that. And this is part of my personal growth. the me 3 years ago would have been, oh, hell no, I call the shots. I know exactly where I'm going to be in these time periods. And for me, one of the silver linings of COVID was kind of a throat punch saying, yeah, you're not really in control. You know, turn this over. And yes, you have all of these skills, and, you know, if you want to call it God, if you want to call it the universe, you know, however you want to look at that, I'm in control, and I will place you where I need you in time. And and again, balance, right? So what I am doing right now is I'm falling into the more yin side of it. The yin being the flexible, the one that absorbs, the great feminine, if you want to look at it that way, versus the yang, which is the push, drive, make stuff happen, that kind of thing, which had been my life all the way up to about 3 years ago. And so now I'm just like, again, trying to fall into a balance, just like the 7 pillars need to be in balance. That needs to be in balance as well. And for me, the message of COVID was, I think you need to back off, and you're not really the driver. You might think you're the driver, you're not. So back off, and I will direct you in the way that you need to go. So I'm kind of in that mode right now.
That's cool.
I'm kind of in that too right now. I trust my skills, and I trust if I keep going out there, put myself out there and build up my skills, that, you know, life will take me wherever it needs to take. And like, I'm kind of out there too. Like, I agree. I don't know what I'm going to do just yet, but I trust myself. I trust, like, if I keep going, then something will happen as well. So I'm really glad that, you know, I'm not the only one. It's really inspiring that you're also on there. But thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a very powerful answer, because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, like, they don't want to like admit that, like, just like saying like, I don't really know, you know. Oh, yeah, that's true. Which is the truth with entrepreneurship. Like, the truth with entrepreneurship is, like, you don't know what's really going to happen tomorrow. Like, yeah.
You really don't. And again, it comes back to the baseball analogy, right? If you would have asked me 20 years ago that polioeffects would even have been in existence, I would have been like, what? I don't, what do I know about, event play? How would I ever be involved in a business like that? That's a ridiculous notion. I have no clue how that would ever come about, and it happened. So, you know, 5 years from now, who knows what? What I will tell you is, whatever it is, I will be very, very passionate about it. And so whatever twists and turns my life takes, whatever it is I wind up doing it will be something that I am extremely passionate about. That I do know. So that what that thing is, I'm open.
Yeah, so we have one last EAA specific question, which is, what is something you're doing right now in your life to be more of a doer?
To be more of a doer.
Yeah.
Well, here's something very, very practical that we're doing. So we are right now we're in the process of taping segments for the Primal Uprising Virtual Summit. And so this is a very, very intensive process for both Michelle and I, because between the both of us, we're going to have about 60 interviews to do. And these interviews have to be done over a short period of time, and they have to be taped, and they have to be edited. And, you know, and of course we have a team that is behind us that will produce this, but it is a lot of work. And you guys know, doing a podcast is not just, it's not just right. There's a lot of people. And when people think about doing a podcast, they're like, oh, that'd be easy. I can listen to a podcast. It can't be that hard. Yeah. And there's a lot that you don't realize is going on behind the scenes to put out a podcast. So yeah, as far as being a doer, that's what we're doing right now. And that summit will roll out in late September. And that is in support of the book. And that is kind of our hard launch for the book. We have a soft launch that's going on right now, but that is the launch for the book. So that's occupying a lot of our time right now.
Awesome. All right. And one last question for the audience. If you could give one last message to the world out there, what would you say? Or to our audience? Out there, what would you say? Or to our audience?
Yeah. And specifically for entrepreneurs out there, adaptability, man, adaptability. That you take your skills, take everything you have, and Be adaptable, right? Situations come up on the daily that you're going to have to improvise, right? None of this is written in code. Like I say, what worked for an entrepreneur 2 years ago is not going to work now. And we're all figuring this out. We are all, everybody. I live side by side with entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur. They're figuring it out. They're figuring it out in their specific niches, and we're figuring out. It is a daily thing. What next? What next? What next? What next? Because you are essentially the one who is walking through the jungle with the machete. You are the one clearing the path, right? So you walk up against something you can't cut with a machete, you're going to have to go around it some way, shape, or form, over it, under it, something. But you're the one that's going to have to figure it out. That is entrepreneurship.
Wow, amazing, good message.
Wow. All right, I think that was a good episode. I think this wraps it up.
All right. Thank you guys out there.
This was Keith Norris. Please check out polioeffects. Please check out his book.
Yeah, Primal Uprising.
His coaching, everything. He has a lot to give you guys. So hope you guys like this episode. Hope you guys like him. And there we have it. Peace out, guys.